anyway, I just want to say I'm really glad that you're able to join me for this virtual opening. Thanks to St. Joseph Healthcare Healing Arts Program and the Art Commission for this opportunity. And thank you to Quirk Chevrolet and the Maine Chevy dealers for being the sponsor of the art series at St. Joe's. We want to thank also all the businesses, individuals, and foundations who have been supportive of the arts at St. Joe's. Those gifts and those sponsorships help make wonderful programming possible. So thanks very much. Okay, now here we go. So that's where I wish we were right now, with a glass of wine in our hands, all together in the wonderful space at 900 Broadway. This format, however, has been great in that there's no way that I think there's something like 75 email addresses that are up and active at this moment, with some of you, two people in the room. We never would have been able to pull that off, or to include friends from Oregon, from Florida, from England. So great to have you all here for this. Well, some of you have known me for many years and have known me, some of you my entire life, my cousins. I realize that some of you are seeing my art and meeting me for the first time tonight. And so, so let me offer a bit of background before I launch into my presentation. Several of my cousins who are on this call tonight. And folks, if you can put yourself on mute.
He's got a jibber jabber about his cousins.
If you can put yourself on mute, that'd be great. All right. So anyway, so some of my cousins who are on know that we've been really fortunate to be from a family of artists, painters, designers, architects, and art teachers. And we've been inspired by their art and have had the wonderful opportunity to know these great people. I'm especially fortunate. In my case, I feel inspired by the landscapes of my uncle Harold Symes, by my grandmother's sister, Olivia McConnell, and by my Aunt Sarah Symes Lawrence, all wonderful painters. And their paintings, as many of you know, are on the walls of our house throughout our home, and we're really fortunate in that. At the same time, it's very intimidating at times as an artist to be surrounded by such impressive art and great work. And so for me, there was a time where it was very frustrating to try to match the work that they did, to try to match up to their beautiful watercolors, for example. So it wasn't until about 20 years ago that really in a state of frustration over my a struggling watercolor painting that I was doing, that I cut it up and used it as a collage. And there was something about that captured my interest, and so I started building upon that as I went forward, which really gave me my own voice, my own art, and my own style. So tonight, what I want to do is I want to talk to you a little bit about watercolor collages, which is something that's, I think, fairly unique to me, as well as block prints, which is something I've moved into more recently. And what I hope to do during this period of time, or over the next few minutes, is provide you with an opportunity to see some of the pieces that are in the current exhibit, most of which have been produced during the pandemic, interestingly enough. And then, and I'll divide my talk into two parts, as you might guess. And so I'll start with the watercolor collages. And along the way, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about process, because I get asked a lot, even by my own family. So how did you do that? Or how are you doing that? What am I looking at here? So, as you see things as I talk about this, if you've got questions, please save those to the end. And then at the end, we'll ask you to send those, use the chat function to send those to Deb Dahl, who will act as our sort of moderator regarding that. So anyways, I said I'm going to start with watercolor collages. And as you're looking at this, let me go to the next one. So as you're looking at this collage, I think it's worth just noting that for all of us, and this is one of the odd things during the pandemic, is that all of our art is the same size. If you go online, it's the size of our computer screens. And so I have to assure you that this is much larger. It's matted and it's framed. You're seeing just the cropped art. It's most of my collages are 24 inches that are in this show are 24 inches by 18 inches, just as a point of reference. And the prints that you're going to see later are quite a bit smaller. They're about 12 by 14, so probably the size of many of your screens as you're looking at it. So this particular collage is the Katahdin tablelands, and some of you who have been fortunate enough to hike Katahdin, our tallest mountain in Maine, know that depending on the trail you end up on, you can end up on the tablelands, this large, enormous flat area littered with boulders, and at the right time of the year, some very interesting foliage. And I think as you look at this, you can begin to see that what I have here is not only cut paper, but torn paper, and that there's something going on here. Let me move to the next one. Whoops, I don't want to do that. So this is a collage called Hell's Half Acre. It's a little collection of small islands, rocky islands, and sandbars off of Stonington, Maine. One of those places, rare places you don't find many lobster traps because it's so hazardous, but absolutely gorgeous, a gorgeous spot. And I think as you look at this particular collage, you can begin to see that there is a depth here in terms of the layering of the paper, that you're seeing some that's torn again and some that has been cut. And I want you to notice in this work, I want you to notice the edges. I want you to notice the textures. I want you to notice the shadows. Yeah, while it may look like a watercolor painting, if you stood away from it from a distance, I really, as you get close, you're going to see some depth to the work itself. So I'm going to show you really how I do this. So this is a photo. Some of you are familiar with Schoodic Point, which is one of our family's favorite places to go in Maine. And it's a unique shot to be here in wintertime and see snow on it. And so I decided I wanted to turn this into a collage. And so beginning, I have to start in the back. I start all of these in the back, move to the front, and I needed to find blue. So what you're looking at there is a bin, one of the many bins of paper that I have, all watercolor, acid-free paper that I've painted swaths of color on. And you would think, actually I have two bins about that size of blues, that I would easily be able to find whatever blue in the world I need for sea, for sky, or whatever. I can assure you it's never that easy. So what you're looking at here is the collage in progress. In this case, you can see the blue in the back, and the clouds. Clouds are created by actually taking watercolor paper and tearing it very carefully to separate the sheets from each other. I don't know if the right term is to use for that, but it gives you a lightness, some transparency, and some color to it. And then you're starting to see me build this up. And if you notice, in this case, I was using some scrap paper that I'd written on, although it's still art paper. And you can start to see that I need to have those rocks come out from the water to be separated from and to provide some depth. And so I'm starting to build it out. Again, you're seeing more now. The rocks are starting to come out. You can see the shadow below, which is telling me that I'm going to need to put another layer in there. And of course, these rocks are getting quite close. There's probably at least a 1/4 inch of paper that's stacked under those rocks closest to you, whereas at the far back is a single sheet. And then there's the finished collage. Sometimes, as you can see with the mountains of Acadia, in those cases, what I've done with watercolor is I've painted it blue, and then I've gone back with a sponge. Again, this is all before assembling it on the swaths, and I've, thought, oh, well, I'll color it with some different colors, and maybe I'll use that someday. And this was the day for that one. You'll really see in this collage, which is I'm losing my place now, is in Cobscook Bay. Now I'm remembering where I am. Cobscook Bay from the top of a little tiny mountain called Klondike. And in this case, you can really see the shadows of the trees as they separate from the water. And again, the depth that comes through that. And those colors are, for those of us in Maine know, those are the real thing. We really do see colors like that in the fall. Another collage. This is Sally Island off of Corea, Maine. Corea in Maine is spelled C-O-R-E-A. Wonderful little fishing village here on the coast. And what we're looking at there is Sally Island. And again, you can see the depth and the even the shadows behind. And then this is sort of a unique collage for me in that all my collages I think all of my collages, maybe one print I've ever done, have been, they're all done from my own photos of places that Lisa and I have traveled. And in this case, this one is outside of the US. It's in Nova Scotia near Peggy's Cove. And it's a favorite of mine. You've seen a lot of seascapes. Here is a collage of Chimney Pond, which is where, if you're really fortunate, you might be someday. It's got to be one of the most beautiful places and stunning places in Maine. One of the challenges of any artist is to try to capture that beauty. I'm not sure I've done that here, but I've given it a good try. But at some point, if you ever have a chance to hike up to Chimney Pond, even if you don't summit Katahdin, it's an amazing place to go. Here is a collage. I actually just sold this today. Now this is from a hike that I did with a couple of very good friends, where we were on the Cathedral Trail, actually looking from the Cathedral Trail across to the Knife's Edge, the summit up above us. And again, you can see the depth, the shadows that are there. And here's the Knife's Edge. Again, for anybody who's climbed Katahdin, certainly one of the most frightening hikes that you can do is walking along that edge. And it is as pointed as it looks. And again, hopefully you're seeing the depth within that. So I want to talk about block prints next. Block printing is something that I came to a few years ago. I have the good fortune of having as my neighbor and friend the book artist Walter Tisdale. Walter has 3 different presses in his studio. All the supplies, all the know-how, and all the generosity to encourage somebody to start on printing. This print was one of the earlier prints I did, but actually is an absolute favorite of mine and one of the most complex prints. I can't explain it to you tonight. I would take a whole workshop. Anybody who knows anything about this is a reduction print, and there's about 7 colors in there. It's a single block. And all I can tell you is there's not many of these, and it's a lot of work. But it's one of my early pieces. But I'd like to talk more. I'd like to talk more about these prints, these potato harvest prints. And I'll tell you that back in 1977, I'm going to jump ahead to this picture. Back in 1977, Lisa and I skipped school, skipped college during our sophomore year. And I guess that would, yeah, it was freshman year, actually, end of our freshman year. the beginning of our sophomore year. I got to get that right. We traveled up to her family's farm in New Sweden, Maine, where we helped with the potato harvest. And I can tell you that in addition to being some of the hardest work I've ever done in my life, is also quite fascinating to watch this whole process. And I had an Instamatic little pocket camera. Some of you are familiar with those from the old days that I had with me. And I took maybe 5 snapshots. And as far as we know, those are the only pictures that exist of this family actually farming, even though they've been on that farm for more than 100 years. What you're seeing here is my father-in-law, Clyde Jepson, and he is hoisting a barrel onto the back of a truck, a full barrel of potatoes. I believe my sister-in-law, Grace, was probably driving that day. And so anyway, so I found these images a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, and decided to turn them into a print. So in that process, and again, some of you are very familiar with this and others are not, in that process, these are woodblock prints. And so what I've done is I did a drawing. You can see the drawing here on the woodblock. I'm sorry, it's not a very good, good image. And ultimately, what I have to do is color in, at least in pen, anything that I want to have remain black and leave everything that I want to remain white, leave it white, leave it clear, don't color it. And you ultimately, again, this is just for demonstration purposes, ultimately I'm using sharp tools to cut away whatever is going to be white, leaving the black behind. So anything that's going to be cut is going to be white. And ultimately I have a block, and you can see the block there. Again, reversed from the picture you saw, the photograph you saw. All the ink is applied by hand. In this case, I was using my friend Walter's printing press with his adult supervision, and really using it to get the paper to roll over and be pressed against that block. And here, loading the paper into the press, one sheet at a time, one block at a time, one inking at a time, and there's the image coming off, the wet image coming off the press. And then the process is completed, it's repeated. I roll the ink on, put the paper in, and so on. So while the image, it remains the same, every one of these prints is unique. And so that's, sometimes as we think of prints, we think of things that are copied, run through a machine of some sort. In this case, the press really just acts as the weighting process. And so there's the finished scene. A little different. There's some artistic license taken there. Here's another one from the same series. My father-in-law dropping barrels in this case, and my brother-in-law Todd, who was I think maybe 12 or 13, helping his father roll the barrels as they drop them off for the pickers to pick up or to use. And again, father-in-law on the digger, on a tractor, pulling a digger, which turns over the potatoes. It's a couple rows at a time, a few pickers in the background. And so it gives you a sense of how these prints are produced. And these have been really popular with my Aroostook County friends, as you might guess. I want to talk to you about another printing process here. What you're looking at here is what's called a white line print. And white line prints again, this is a woodblock print. They're called white line prints or Provincetown prints. It's a technique that got its start somewhere around 1914 or 1915 in Provincetown, Massachusetts. A group of artists there called themselves the Provincetown Printers. And they took sort of what was a Japanese method of printing, which was much more complex, many blocks and so on, and simplified it. And basically what they did is that they decided to provide the image by cutting out the white lines in the print, as you can see here. So all the shapes are outlined in white. In this case, I'm going to show you how this is done. So here's a picture of the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone, the Yellowstone River. I'm actually part of a print exchange where I'll be providing a dozen prints to this organization, the studio in Oregon, and they get them from about a couple hundred other block printers, and then they send us back 10 of them from somebody else, and so it's a print exchange. So anyway, so as part of the print exchange, I've taken that image, and here again you're seeing what I've done is sort of abstract this. That's just my watercolor, just so I've got an idea. Gee, maybe this will work. Maybe this will look okay. Then here's the block. Things are in reverse now. You're just seeing that I've penned in what my image is going to be. Here, I've started to cut. So you can see on the left, I've cut away any of the lines, but I'm only cutting the lines in this case. So different from the other kind of printing. And obviously I'll cut those other ones away. Here, what you're seeing is, you can see on the left, you can see that there's a piece of paper that's hinged on there. I've got that hinged on with tape, so it'll fold back and forth. And using watercolor paints, I am painting one section at a time. In this case, one section of green. And then I will put that piece of paper, flip it over. It's hinged so it stays in the same place. I use, I think my maybe great grandmother's silver spoon in this case as a spoon to rub over the back of it. And when I pull it back, I see what I've printed, one section at a time. And you can see I've missed a spot that I'm going to need to go back to. And so this method allows you to continue to work away at it. And so I'm going to show you, I'm not going to show you exactly in sequence, but you can see here by now on the right, the block on the left, and I'm painting a section of sort of a rusty red. On the left, I've done the sky. I've repaired that little bit of green, added the other green. Pretty close to finished here. Again, each section has been painted separately. Each time the paper's flipped over, it's rubbed, and I'm creating the image as I go. Here's my water, trying to get that rushing water. That was a challenge. And so I will repeat the same method, in this case, at least a dozen times, the whole process a dozen times in order to provide a dozen prints for this one show. And so here you can see this is a print that is in the show. That other one was not. These are prints that are in the show, or one of these is in the show. In this case, this one is called The Point. And again, we're in Korea, C-O-R-E-A, Maine. Up in the left-hand corner is the block. And you'll see the images, three of the other images are there. And what I want you to notice is, with this method, is that you can really tinker with it. The actual shapes never change. The image, the picture itself doesn't change, but how you color it, where you put shadows, how I color the rocks, how deep the blue of the sky is, how many clouds, if I've provided myself that opportunity, all have flexibility there. This is another white line block print, sort of a hazy day in Korea Harbor. You can start to see, I think, in places, particularly here, you can see in the water the wood. As I do this work, you can see the grain of the wood coming through. That could be bothersome. Sometimes it is to me, but mostly it just shows that it's a wood block, and it gives it some character. I think that's sort of unique. Oh, and I should go back just a second. I just want to show you that the blocks get really, really interesting themselves because they get super saturated with the paint. Each time they get darker and darker and darker, and they are treasures as far as I'm concerned. I love the blocks, and I know I've had at least one friend wanting to buy one from me, and so far just not going to happen. They're special because they do allow me to continue to print if I want to. So So that's going to be the last white line block print. This is a view from Sutton Island here in Maine, just an amazingly wonderful place. We have some wonderful friends there, looking off to one of the Cranberry Isles. And again, you can see in the water how the wood block begins to show the grain. You can see the motion that comes with that, and in that case, it works very effectively. So let me just sort of wrap up at least this part before we go on to the Q&A by saying that I want to make sure I cover the right things. I do want to say that this the collage process that I showed you at the beginning and the printing process are really compatible in a lot of ways for me. Some of you know me well and will realize that one of the things that it does is it really allows me to gain a lot of control over mediums that are sometimes difficult to control. And so it's blocks, it's pieces of color, and in both cases, I think they are complementary of each other. So in the show, if you have the opportunity to go, it's up from now through the end of May. The next artist is Jim Linehan, a nationally known artist, really extraordinary. Fortunate to follow Nina Jerome, another extraordinary Maine artist. So I feel very honored to be between those two shows. The gallery is at 900 Broadway. It's a facility where people are going in and out to get their appointments. But having been there while we were hanging the show, it's amazing to see how many people are there looking at the art. And I think probably what it means to them is they're waiting for sometimes scary sorts of things that they're going through. You can, if you can't see the show in person, it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. But if you can't see the show in person, you can go to my website, which is jeffwahlstrom.com. Should be easy to remember as long as you know how to spell my name. But even if you get Jeff Wahlstrom Art, I think you'll get there. And there's a tab that I've set up that says Healing Arts tab, which will allow you to see pretty much everything that's in the show. Not quite everything, but most of what's in the show. And so, so let me stop there.